Hey, it's my great pleasure to welcome Notre Dame Athletic Director Pete Bevacqua to Questions for Cancer Research today. Pete, how are you?
Good, good. Great to be with you. Doing well, Chris. Thanks for having me.
It's great. I literally have hours worth of questions for you with everything going on in college football and sports today. We're going to keep things moving today. Pete, to start, your resume is really impressive, especially for anyone who likes sports. Let me just go through this really quickly. You graduated Notre Dame in '93, where you walked on for Coach Lou Holtz as a punter before attending Georgetown Law. Came out of law school, worked for blue chip law firm Davis Polk. You then accepted a position at the USGA as legal counsel. You ran the US Open for the USGA before taking over all their business operations. You spent a short period at talent agency CAA, heading up their golf division before accepting the CEO job at the PGA of America, where you ran the organization from 2012 through 2018. From there, you moved on to NBC Sports and were named the chairman in September of 2020. You eventually returned to your alma mater in June of 2023 and succeeded Jack Swarbrick as AD in March of 2024. Pete, just an amazing corporate journey, especially in the world of sports. How special has all this been for you, and how meaningful to return to Notre Dame as athletic director?
Yeah, I consider myself lucky, Chris. Sports were always a huge part of my life from when I was a little kid. Golf, obviously played a ton of golf, but played football, basketball, baseball. I'd say probably football was probably my best sport growing up. I went to Brunswick and Greenwich, Connecticut, and was the quarterback there. So I always had a dream of getting into sports. Certainly wasn't good enough to make a profession out of playing any of those sports, unfortunately. But I always credit my father because he and my mom were obviously huge influences in my life. And my father would always say, "Hey, if you can make a career out of something you're passionate about, life is a lot more enjoyable." And my father passed away in 1997, at a pretty young age. I was just out of law school. And, my time at Davis Polk's a great firm, great people, uh, just a wonderful place to work. But I knew pretty quickly that was not what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't want to be a corporate attorney, but I gutted it out for 4 years, and it was an experience that was so important in the formation of my professional life, learning how to work as hard as I did at Davis Polk. But my father's words were always ringing in my ears, and I kind of finally made the point that I somehow have to transition into the sports world. And I was fortunate enough to get that role at the USGA back in September of 2000. And it really kind of changed my life. And all of a sudden, I started to wake up with a bit of a jolt in my step and looking forward to what I was doing. And I've just kind of I think a combination of working hard and building great relationships and maybe being in the right spot at the right time. And when I was at NBC, a chairman of NBC Sports, I thought that's where I'd spend the rest of my career. I loved it, loved the people, loved what we were doing. Such an exciting time for major media industries and this transition from a broadcast cable approach to a broadcast streaming approach. And sports was right in the middle of that. But when I got the call from Father John Jenkins, who was the president of Notre Dame at the time, with this opportunity, it's just something I couldn't pass up. With the exception of my wife, Tiffany, and our three kids, nothing in the world means more to me than Notre Dame. And the ability to come into this role during this time period where there's such a level of unprecedented change in college sports. At Notre Dame, we're navigating that landscape of making sure that we maintain what it means to have a fully integrated student athlete experience. I had to do it and couldn't be happier.
I did take note in a previous interview, you spoke of the importance of ensuring that Notre Dame student athletes remain integrated with the overall student body. This is somewhat challenging in the current environment, and in contrast to some of the other Power Four conference schools, where in many cases players have limited access to others outside their programs. Typically, these players live in athletic dorms, they eat in athletic dining halls, they have their own training facilities, and I would think a fair amount of the curriculum consists of online classes. Pete, can you talk a little bit about your motivation with regard to Notre Dame student athletes and how you foster an integrated environment for them?
For us, Chris, it's the number one priority. We firmly believe that you are a student athlete, and we stress that. And I had a young women's basketball recruit in my office a few weeks ago, top 5 player in the country in high school, and an amazing student, unbelievable grades. And she was here with her mom, and I said to her, I said, listen, with your basketball ability, you could go anywhere in the country and play basketball. You could go to UConn, you could go to South Carolina. So with your grades, you could go to Harvard, Princeton, Yale. Now I'm admittedly biased, right? But I said to her, I truly believe we're the best 1-2 punch in the country. If you want to go to a school where you're going to be surrounded with every athletic uh, asset that you need, the best coaches, the best facilities, strength and conditioning, nutrition, mental health, we're going to make you the best basketball player you can be, and you're going to play on the biggest stage. But we're going to do the same thing academically. We're going to make sure that you're taking a major that means something to you, something that you're interested in. You're going to be in those classes in person with fellow students and professors. You're going to have the academic resources, tutoring, everything you need to leave here with one of the best degrees in the world. And if that doesn't appeal to you, if you're just coming to school as a stop to go get to the WNBA, like, you're not going to be happy here, because it's tough to be a student here. It's really tough to be a student athlete because you're a full-time student and you basically have a full-time job. And that doesn't appeal to everybody, but our coach Marcus Freeman says it best: you choose hard when you come to Notre Dame. And it resonates with those kids who come here and play in one of our 26 programs. And what I love, Chris, is when I'm meeting with student athletes, and I meet with student athletes every day, either individually or in groups. At some point in the conversation, I'll always ask them, who are your best friends on campus? And if it's a woman on the basketball team, she'll mention other kids on the basketball team. Maybe she'll mention other student athletes, but without exception, Chris, they're mentioning kids in their dorms, kids in their majors, maybe somebody who plays the trumpet in the band, somebody who's never picked up a ball, shot a ball, kicked a ball in their lives. And that's what we maintain here. That's what we're passionate about. And I tell all of our recruits and current student athletes, for some people, it ends at 18, some it ends at 21. If you're lucky and you can play a sport professionally, maybe it ends when you're 30 or 35. But even for the greatest of all time, it ends, and you're going to be a young person when it does. And it's that Notre Dame degree, that Notre Dame education, the connections that you make here, the Notre Dame family, that's going to serve you so well for the next 50, 60 years of your life. So when we say coming to Notre Dame is not a 4-year decision, it's a forever decision. That's why we say for forever. We don't want it to be just kind of a punchy tagline. We mean it. We want to really set you up for the rest of your life. And, to be fair, in the modern age of college sports, it's tough, but we think it's more valuable than ever, a bigger differentiator for us than ever. And now, on so many of these major universities that have major athletic programs, when you walk onto those campuses, you walk into a segregated environment where you have students on one side, athletes on the other, and they might as well be in 2 different planets. That's not the case here. We just don't accept that.
Yeah, with all the changes that have gone on, I mean, that's really to be admired. I mean, I speak to some other coaches and other schools, and the whole process has just become very transactional, right? I mean, year to year, and a lot of the kids are saying, "Hey, how can I maximize my value?" And unfortunately for the coaches, it's come down to, "Hey, how do I, maximize the results of my team for this 1 year?" So, I mean, for you guys to be able to succeed with keeping that long-term educational view in mind is really admirable, without a doubt.
No, I appreciate you saying that. And hey, it's core to who we are, right? And I think unfortunately the the examples of that happening around the country are becoming less and less. But you know, we absolutely plan to continue to be one of the schools that believe in a real, true, authentic student athlete experience.
I love it, Pete. That's great. Pete, you've made it very clear that Notre Dame is very intent on remaining a football independent. In previous years, we saw speculation that Notre Dame football might at some point join a conference, and if so, maybe the Big Ten. One of the main benefits of Notre Dame's unique status as a football independent was on full display last winter. Notre Dame lost to Ohio State in the national championship, but came away from the college playoff with a reported $20 million, and Ohio State with about $2.5 million after its conference split with the other schools. I was really intrigued by your comments a few months back that rather than Notre Dame joining a conference, we may potentially see more top programs follow Notre Dame and go independent. Can you elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Yeah, well, to start, Chris, you know that was widely reported, the 20 million CFP earnings. You know what wasn't reported is, you know, if we don't make the CFP, we don't get any of that. So you know, we kind of
Yeah.
we're kind of we eat what we kill when it comes to college football. We take
Right.
that chance, but we do feel very bullish about being independent. You know, football is obviously a key part of Notre Dame's DNA. I think we have the absolute best coach in the country for Notre Dame, and Coach Freeman, and an amazing staff around him. We have spectacular football facilities. We have a broadcast partnership with NBC that's, you know, 34 years and counting. And now with the expansion of the CFP from 4 teams to 12 and maybe 14 or 16, you know, when it's tough to be independent when there's a 4-team playoff and you basically have to go undefeated if you're independent. But with that 12-team playoff, you know, we can knock on that national championship door more and more often and knock it down. So that's key. But, you know, when I think about our independence and when I think about the future of college football, and people ask me this question a lot, do you ever see yourself joining a conference? You know, I always say, I think the conference we would join, we would kind of have to join, is some form of super league, where if there's a conference of the true teams that move the needle in football, maybe the 20, 25, 30 teams. So I think, you know, if that's where this world's heads, and I hope it doesn't, I hope we don't end up with a super league, a super conference, which should be kind of a mini version of the NFL with maybe 25 or 30 teams. But I actually think, you know, in this day and age, with the money in college football and the media deals, I think the chances of more big brand teams doing things on their own, becoming independent, are probably greater than us joining a conference like the SEC or the Big Ten. Conferences I admire incredibly, you know, wonderful conferences, wonderful teams, but I just don't see Notre Dame doing that anytime soon.
Yeah, and you know, you're right. I think people kind of lose focus. The fact that you're a football independent, you know, does create some pressure, right? I mean, you've got to, number one, if you don't make the playoff, you don't get any money. But number two, I mean, you've got to make sure you can schedule out. I know you're hoping to keep USC going. You just signed a series with Clemson, but I mean, that in of itself, people would think is such a simple thing. But you've got to make sure you've got a, you know, high quality schedule going out, you know, year in, year out.
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, the Clemson series we're really excited about. We did recently did a home and home with Texas that we'll be doing in a few years. You know, we're lucky. A lot of teams, a lot of great teams want to play us. You know, those other big brands in college football, to play a team like Notre Dame. It's good for us. It's good for them. So that's helpful. But again, you know, you talk about the pressure of being independent. And last year was a great example. Here we played in the national championship game against a great Ohio State team. But, you know, if we had lost to NIU in a 4-team playoff, you know, we're not getting into the CFP. But because it was a 12-team, and credit to Marcus and the team, you know, to turn around to go 14-2 last year, that makes it more doable for us for the foreseeable future.
Right. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what's going on in college football. This year's college football playoff will resemble last year's with one important change. First round buys will be awarded to the top four ranked teams. That's a nice change for Notre Dame, which had no chance for a bye last year as only conference champions qualified. In terms of the CFP beyond this season, there seems to be a bit of a divide right now, most notably between the Big Ten and SEC, which jointly hold the decision making power in terms of future college football playoffs. In recent days, we've seen surprising reports that the Big Ten is possibly considering a 24 to 28 team playoff format as opposed to what many expected would likely be a 16 team format. And I won't get into too many details, but I think it's fair to say that the Big Ten overall prefers a format with more automatic bids for the Power Four conferences, especially the SEC and the Big Ten, and the SEC, Big 12, and ACC are favoring more at-large bids. Pete, you have previously stated that you feel as though teams should earn it on the field. Does Notre Dame have a preference amongst the proposals being discussed, and do you have any feel as to how this all may play out, as we're really not too far removed from a November 30th deadline?
Yeah, I think, there are a lot of formulas out there. I think some of them are just kind of ideas that don't have much merit. Uh, I think the best format for the future, in my opinion, is a 16 format with 5 automatic qualifiers and 11 at large. The 5 automatic qualifiers going to the Power Four conference champions and the highest ranked G5 champion. And then 11 qualifiers at large, which will be, of course, hopefully us, if we can do it. Teams from the SEC, teams from the Big Ten, the ACC, the Big 12, but prove it on the field. And I'm fortunate in that when I have conversations with our president, Father Bob Dowd, there's great consistency in Notre Dame leadership at the president's level, which gives me great comfort. So we're able to talk about not just what's in the best interest of Notre Dame right now, but the best interests of Notre Dame football over the next 20, 30, 50 years, which aligns with what's best for college football. Now, I could make the argument that the more automatic qualifiers for SEC and the Big Ten is actually favorable to Notre Dame, because it would be easier for us to schedule those opponents, because they'd be less fearful of a competitive game against Notre Dame, whether we win or they win. It's a tough game. And if they knew they had a better chance of making the CFP, they'd be more inclined to play us. So even saying that, we still don't believe that's the right answer, because we don't believe it's in the best interest of college football. You have to prove it on the field, and we'll take our chances. And we think that's why we believe in a 16 format with the 5 and 11 structure. I think anything beyond 16 teams, Chris, I think you start to seriously diminish the importance of the regular season. And what I love about 12, and what I think can be maintained with 14 or 16, is you have a great playoff structure with great teams, but yet you maintain the integrity of the regular season where every game means something. After we lost to NIU, our playoff season started. We couldn't lose again. And that created great drama. And I think we have a great formula now that maybe should be expanded, but only to 14 or 16 teams. How it will turn out, you mentioned the SEC and the Big Ten certainly have more of a voting interest to make the decision, but they have to be guided by good faith. And they have a fiduciary duty to do what's in the best interest of college football. And I hope that's the case. I'm sure it will be.
You just tell me quickly, I mean, a little bit behind the scene look, what's it like when you guys all get together in a meeting room? I mean, there's a lot at stake. Is it pretty cordial? I mean, the clock is ticking a little bit. I mean, what's the mood like when you guys all get together?
Yeah, it's always respectful, cordial. There's moments of tension, right? Most people in that room do a great job of balancing what's in the best interests of their constituencies, their conference, and college football. And my hope is that we can continue to be guided by that spirit. Yeah, you have to do I have an obligation in that room, and I'm in that room to do what's best for Notre Dame, but you have to balance that what's best for college football, what will be a legitimate playoff, what will the general public accept, the football fans, college football fans accept, what's in the best interest. So these kids around the country, wherever they go to school, when they, wake up in late August and September, they know they have a chance if they play well enough to compete for a national championship. That we have to maintain that. Nobody should start on, third base.
Okay. Got it. Pete, as I previously mentioned, in the spring of 1992, you walked onto the Notre Dame football team as a punter for legendary coach Lou Holtz. I recently ran into a mutual friend of ours, longtime sports television producer Mark Loomis, and he told me that you might be willing to share a good story about a conversation that you had with Coach Holtz about 20 years after graduation. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, well, I was a pretty good high school football player. Certainly not Notre Dame material and I got recruited by small schools in the Northeast area. Went to Notre Dame, tried to walk on as a quarterback my freshman year, had back surgery that summer, walked back on in the spring of that junior year, participated in every spring practice with the team, got sent to punting camp at the University of Pittsburgh, hurt my back again. So my little failed experiment with Notre Dame football, I like to say I was a fly on the wall for about a half a second. Certainly not rude. They're not going to make a movie about me like they did about Rude. I was horribly inconsequential, but it was fun and had a nice behind the scenes look at it all. So fast forward, I graduated in 93. Fast forward to 2007 when I was running the US Open. Bill Fallon, a good friend of mine, was a member at Oakmont and very involved in the Open. And he called me up and said he was going to go see Coach Holt speak that night in Pittsburgh. He called me the next day and he said, Pete, I went, and Bill did play football at Notre Dame. He was a tight end in the late 70s. And he called me up the next day and he said, hey, I saw Coach Holtz and I mentioned your name. And without skipping a beat, he said, Pete Bevacqua. He goes, Pete Bevacqua has the heart of a lion. And I said, he said that about me? He goes, yeah, without skipping a beat. And I was like, wow. And I went home. I told my wife, I'm like, God, I must have made an impression on him somehow. That was 2007. Now fast forward to like 2015 when I was the CEO of the PGA of America. And I would do a radio show on Sirius XM like once a month, the state of golf. And we were doing it in Orlando. And Coach Holtz was going to co-host with me that day. So one of the commercial breaks, I said, hey, you said this about me and it just had a real impact on me. And I just wanted to thank you. And he started laughing. And he goes, Pete, he goes, I've been coaching college football for 40, 50 years. He goes, whenever somebody mentions a kid and I just have no idea who they are, I say, oh my God, boy, he had the heart of a lion. I can't say they were fast because maybe they were slow. I can't say they were tall because maybe they were short, but I can always say they had a heart of a lion. So I said, Lou, I wish you hadn't told me that. You kind of burst my bubble. So that's my infamous heart of a lion story.
Oh, I love Coach Holtz. He crushed you right in the middle of an interview.
Yeah, he's the best, though. One of the benefits of, over the years, I built a really great friendship with him, and he's a wonderful man and just such a huge part of Notre Dame. And I love to see him out here when he's on campus.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Pete, let me see if I can get two quick questions in here before we have to call it a day. In recent years, we'd heard talk of potential multi-year contracts with buyout options between the schools and student athletes as a possible means to create more roster stability, less transfer portal activity. Can you tell us if student athletes at Notre Dame or at other schools, as far as you know, are signing multi-year contracts with buyout options?
I think you'll see more and more of that. This is the first year now that the House settlement has been approved where universities can directly compensate their student athletes in the aggregate up to a cap amount per university of 20.5 million. So you are entering into contracts with student athletes for dollar amounts based on NIL opportunities. We are contemplating exploring, as are other universities, multi-year deals. And I think in this new universe, you will start to see protections for both the student athlete and the university. So that concept of multi-year deals with buyout options and that type of language that you have in other similar scenarios, I think that will become more and more prevalent as we go into this new age of college football. I definitely see that coming. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, it would be great to see more stability, within the game. The transfer portal has been a great weapon for some, but probably has created a little bit too much chaos, I think, in college sports.
Yeah, it has to be fixed. As we were talking to Marcus Freeman, Neil Ivey, our women's basketball coach, Micah Shrewsbury, our men's basketball coach, they would all say the transfer portal is not going to be the solve here. It's incredibly difficult to get underclassmen transfers into Notre Dame. We're opportunistic about it. We've utilized it in each of those sports and will continue. But, Marcus says it best. We have to major in high school students coming into Notre Dame and hopefully staying here for the duration of their student athlete experience.
I love it. Pete, one more for you. And I like this one. There's been speculation of an ACC-Big East merger to create a basketball super conference with none other than Coach K supporting the concept, as well as Rick Pitino. Do you think this is possible or worth exploring by the conference commissioners, given the current ACC ESPN TV contract running through 2036, and the Big East has contracts in place through 2031 with Fox, NBC, and TNT? What do you think, Pete? Hopeful, wishful thinking here, or possible at some point?
I have to tell you, Chris, I haven't paid a lot of attention to that. And that's not to say because I think it's a good idea or a bad idea. I just really haven't focused on it. I think the ACC right now is in a strong spot. I think their commissioner, Jimmy Phillips, has really done a wonderful job there. Having the resolution with the Florida State and Clemson issues, I think, is a great feather in the ACC's cap. And I'll tell you from our perspective, I mean, you talk about us being independent in football, and we are, but we're a part of the ACC for 24 of our 26 programs. Football, we're independent. Hockey, we're in the Big Ten. But a strong ACC is good for Notre Dame. We do everything we can to make the ACC stronger. We play 5 ACC teams a year in college football. Could that work? Maybe. I haven't paid much attention to it, but I'm focused on keeping the ACC as it's currently configured strong and going in a good direction.
Thanks, Pete. Pete, let me ask you quickly, I don't know if that's your office. What's that background there behind us? It's sort of a bleacher configuration?
Yeah, these are seats from the stadium. When we redid the stadium, we had a bunch of the original bleacher seats, and they put a bunch aside. So I have the back wall of my office done in those. And then there's a room in our home here near campus that's done with these seats. And it's pretty neat. It's people tend to like them, and it's a conversation piece.
Yeah, that's really nice. I like that. Pete, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for supporting us here, joining us on Questions for Cancer Research. We wish you, your family, and Notre Dame all the best this year. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris, and good luck yourself. And I look forward to seeing you soon.